Hey guys, I know it's back-to-back days. It's pretty weird for us, but we're trying with our schedules here. You know who it is. That's Ari. I'm Korea. Ari, how's your day going, man?
Pretty good. We're now through one game in each of the Eastern Conference and Western Conference Finals in the NBA. So we got a little piece of each series, obviously. So we'll go in depth on that. Talk some fantasy football later, and yeah, everything's good.
Yeah, that's good to hear. My day, well, we're not going to get into that. So let's start off with the Eastern Conference right now. So obviously it's Heat Celtics. The Heat defeated Joel Embiid and the James Harden list. I always say James Harden list because he did not show up in that last game in the fourth quarter. Simply in the second half, the James Hardenless Philadelphia 76ers. They lost at home in six, and then the Celtics they won at home in Game 7 against Giannis. But shout out to the Bucks. We both had them in the finals, but the Celtics team is I think one of the best teams that we've seen right now. But the Heat they're on an incredible run right now, so it's kind of the best two teams I would definitely say in the East right now, and the standings prove it. I mean, when you look at it, the Celtics, one of the hottest teams coming into the playoffs, they're still on a hot roll. And then you have the Heat after that, Butler and Oladipo incident, they have the best record in the league. And Jimmy Butler, he looks unstoppable playing, shooting the ball right now. So that game finished yesterday. The Heat won. They expanded their lead pretty much throughout that second half. Excuse me. They won, outscored He's outscored the Celtics about 39-14 in that third quarter to make it a 20-point lead, and that was pretty much the story of the game right there. Celtics, Jason Tatum couldn't really shoot the ball well. Just kind of a poor offensive effort from one of the best offensive teams pretty much right now in the NBA with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown shooting the ball well, along with Grant Williams. His Game 7 to send them to the finals. Big game for him. I like this series. Obviously, you have two very defensive teams. Celtics obviously have Marcus Smart, the Defensive Player of the Year, Robert Williams, but obviously Marcus Smart didn't play yesterday with that ankle injury, and Al Horford, one of the bigger contributors for that Celtics team in Game 6 against against the Bucks. He didn't play either because he has COVID or he's in the protocol. So definitely a big factor for yesterday's loss, in my opinion. Ari, game one in the books from yesterday. What'd you like from that game?
Yeah, I mean, we got word it was just a couple hours before the game that Smart and Horford would be out, and so at that point you kind of figured that that was going to be a must-win game for Miami with those two, basically two starters being out for Boston, and it was looking scary in the first half with Boston up 8 for Miami, but then Miami just exploded out of the gate in the second half. You mentioned 39-14, and they couldn't really put away the Celtics. Celtics kind of kept it within 8 to 15, kind of like they kind of kept them in the game up until the last like kind of few minutes. But yeah, I mean Butler 41 points, Tyler Hero at 18, Vincent at 17. They're still playing without Larry, but he missed a large part of the regular season, and they didn't really miss a beat without him. So I don't think that makes a huge difference based on how we've kind of seen them play without him. Um, I believe Smart is kind of trending towards playing for game 2, but it's still kind of a game time decision. And I think Horford's probably still going to be in protocols for game 2. So we'll see if Boston can even the series up, in Miami, or if Miami can take a convincing 2-0 lead. I'm kind of leaning towards Boston taking game 2 just because outside of the one quarter, they kind of had control of most of game 1. And I think if they can get Smart back, that's obviously going to be a huge difference maker. I mean, Pritchard had an 18 or 17 or 18, in his absence, but defensively, obviously Smart, defensive player of the year is going to make a huge difference. Kind of guarding a lot of different players, but especially Jimmy Butler. So yeah, we'll see if Boston can even the series up or if he can take a 2-0 lead.
Yeah, that game is tomorrow. You mentioned that the Heat, pretty much one of the best teams offensively. Jimmy Butler shooting the ball at an excellent rate. He dropped 40 in game 1 on Monday. Game 2 is tomorrow on Thursday. No, that game 1 was on Tuesday. Excuse me. Game 1 is now on Thursday. Game 2, excuse me, on Thursday. Definitely going to be big. Obviously, you mentioned Marcus Smart's health. We'll see how that comes. Is he trending in the positive way for game two? We'll see. And obviously, Al Horford, we'll see how he's doing, obviously, with the COVID protocols that he has to follow. But definitely, Marcus Smart will definitely, if he comes back, definitely a big impact on the defensive side for this Celtics team, as obviously defensive player of the year, missing a key part of that defense, big spark, to transition to their fast break offense, which is one of the best in the leagues. I definitely say so. But game two is tomorrow. Definitely going to be a good game. I expect the Celtics to shoot way better, pretty much consistently throughout the game. Obviously, not just in the first half. You mentioned they were up by 8 on the road, and definitely. I mean, it's definitely a road atmosphere for this team. They haven't really had to start out on the road pretty much at all in this playoffs. Obviously, being the number 2 seed, but now starting off in that road environment, let's see how they overcome before Game 3 goes back to Boston. And obviously, the last two teams. It's kind of crazy that it's just 2 years ago that these two teams met in the Eastern Conference Finals during the bubble when the Heat played the Celtics. The winner, and the Heat obviously won that series to advance to the finals. But it's crazy that the series was just 2 years ago, and now 2 years later, it's the same two teams, pretty much literally like the same two teams, like in terms of star power. I mean, Jimmy Butler's still there, Bam Adebayo. They brought in Oladipo. Hero's still there. Robinson's still there, and then you have, but they obviously don't have Jay Crowder from that 2020 season. But then the Celtics, obviously Tatum and Brown still there. Pretty much similar team. Robert Williams,
the same core. Yeah,
exactly, it's the same core unit. So it's just a rematch. So, and a lot of people are saying this could be Jason Tatum's revenge series. We'll see how he does in game 2 tomorrow. But game 1 pretty much now officially in the books for the Warriors and the Mavericks for game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Warriors defeating the Memphis Grizzlies in 6 to get to this point. After game 6, Clay came back, and yes, I did expect that to eliminate the Memphis Grizzlies at home. And then the Mavericks, obviously, big story, game 7. Luka did it by himself throughout that first half, tying the points the Suns pretty much had in the first half with 27. And we all saw that game 7, the collapse of the Suns. We'll get into that maybe another time, but Mavericks now, game 1 is officially in the books. Warriors have officially won, but I think about 25. The final score was 112 to 87, and yes, it was 112 to 87. So, but yeah. All right. So it's kind of crazy. We thought we didn't expect these two teams to make it this far. Kind of refreshing to see, a 3 and a 4 seed make it to the Western Conference Finals instead of, the top 2 teams. Obviously, the Suns didn't make it. They choked when it really mattered. Mavericks are in. It's game 1 that's just fresh in the books, but Warriors win very comfortably. Plenty of runs in that game. Luka and the Dallas boys, the Mavericks kept it close at half, only down by 9, but the second half, the Warriors just started shooting the ball a little better, getting on those runs to pretty much open this game up and secure the first win of the series, and take that, not commanding, but good 1-0 lead at home, to mention it, because Warriors obviously better seed. So Ari, game 1 fresh in the books. Luka, he dropped a considerable amount of points, but most of the Mavs team didn't really show up as well. What do you make of game 1?
Yeah, I mean, Luka beat the Suns by himself basically in game 7 of last round, but you knew that Luka wasn't going to beat the Warriors up on himself. You need probably 2, maybe even 3 of Brunson, Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, Bullock, Maxi Kleber. You need like 2, maybe 3 of that group to really step up. And they really, really struggled, pretty much all of them in game 1. I think they started 3 of 17, 3 of 18 from 3 as a team in this game. And, between Curry, Poole, and Clay, you're going to get at least 1 to 2, maybe all 3 of them that are going to show up every game. Wiggins is pretty solid, especially in the first half in this game. Yeah, I mean, it's just too much firepower for really just Luka to overcome. I had the Warriors in 5 like before the series started in this series, and this could be a sweep if the Mavs shoot like this the rest of the way. I think they're gonna have one game where they kind of catch fire, probably one of the 2 games at home. I would think because they're kind of a team that's kind of played a lot better at home in this playoff so far. Kind of overall, obviously they played well in Game 7 against the Suns, but that was mostly Luka to and Dinwiddie had 30 plus as well. But they need more than just Luka and one other guy to play well to beat this Warriors team. Unless they just get super super lucky and the Warriors really shoot poorly, and then they have a couple guys who score 30 plus. But yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty easy series for the Warriors, which kind of bodes well for them in the finals. I think the Heat Celtics is going to be a lot more competitive, potentially go to 7 games. So Warriors will definitely have a lot more rest, I would think, than the Heat or Celtics will have heading to the finals. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you right there. I'm taking a look at the box score. I mean, you talked about how bad the Dallas Mavericks shot today. I mean, when you're shooting 22% from 3, that's pretty much the story of the game. Luka and Randy Bullock combining 6 of 20 from 3, could not hit anything from beyond the arc right there. And then Dinwiddie off the bench though, 17 points in 24 minutes. That's pretty decent for him. But when you look at the Warriors and it's just well-rounded, and that's just how this team plays. Curry led with 21, but he had 12 boards. Steph Curry led the team with rebounds. Isn't that crazy? Like, Steph Curry is the only guy that has double-digit rebounds today. Draymond he got 9. Like, just the well-roundedness of this Warriors team is definitely going to be hard for this Dallas team to pretty much compete with. I think Game 3 may be a story, obviously, in Dallas, bigger atmosphere down there. But yeah, when you have Jordan Poole dropping a cool 19 and 26 off the bench, and then Andrew Wiggins, great game for him. He shot well. And then just Warriors shooting over almost 60% from the field. That's pretty much going to be the story of the game. When the Warriors are shooting like they do and they play good defense, yeah, you're not winning any games right there. So, Game 2 will definitely be interesting to see how Luka and them will respond. I'm very pleased with my Warriors. I can't complain. Just the whole game was just great defensively, in my opinion. Offensively, they were doing their thing, a more well-rounded game, and those are the kind of games I like from the Warriors. More well-rounded, getting more passing involved, because it shows these stars like who would have thought Andrew Wiggins dropped 19, Jordan Poole off the bench drops 19, 8 of 12 shooting. Like, you can't complain about that. So Warriors definitely set the tone in Game 1. Game 2 will definitely be interesting to see how the Mavericks will respond, and obviously hope for a better shooting day compared to the one they just had today. Obviously, they're not going to shoot 22% from 3, but with how many stars this Warriors team has, and no one even dropped 30. And so if you have like a Steph or a Clay drop 30, it's going to be even harder for this Mavs team to really catch up if they don't really have any, complementary pieces along Luka, who has to drop at least 50 to, keep the game close with this Warriors team. So Game 2 will definitely be interesting to see. That is on Friday in San Francisco. I think the Warriors will definitely make this series quick. I predicted 5. I think Dallas will maybe take Game 3 or 4, depending on which atmosphere is more electric in Dallas. So, yeah, but this is going to be an easy one. I mean, you mentioned the Heat and Celtics. That definitely is going to go to 7. Game 1 obviously was a kind of a runaway, but I expect Tatum to step up and play better, as well as Brown, and and wait for them to get Smart and Horford back, and then it's a different series. So, but we will bring you the latest on these 2 series as they head to the NBA Finals, which is crazy that it's right around the corner. Like, we were talking about, the playoffs just starting, and now we're almost at the NBA Finals. So we'll bring you that when the playoffs get to that point. But now we're going to switch into some fantasy football content, as we like to do here. And each of us have nominated about 2 or 3. I'm going to let Ari go first, but we've nominated about 2 to 3 people two to three players who we think who will have a pretty better year this year compared to their seasons last year. We've each made we've each made three separate ones, so we're not overlapping here. As Ari gets his setup good over there, but Ari, who are your three players that you think will have a better fantasy football season this year compared to the 2022 season?
Yeah, so I just had kind of two that came to mind that I'll bring up. The first one is someone who I just put a post on today, Saquon Barkley. I know the last couple of seasons he has really burned people. He had the ACL tear a couple years ago, and then last year he played 13 games, but it was kind of the ankle injuries. I think it was a high ankle sprain. I believe if I remember correctly, it was his kind of biggest injury he suffered. So I know after a couple of years of him not panning out, there's going to be those who completely avoid him because that's what people do, is recency bias and all of that. But I've always I always go back to the same example in this case with an ACL tear with Dalvin Cook when he tore his ACL. And then the following season, he dealt with kind of nagging hamstring injuries. That following year, which was kind of common for running backs to tear their ACL, with the contact and with the cutting and all of that they take, as running backs. And then that 2 years later, when he's a full year removed from the ACL tear, was when he really exploded. And I think Saquon, I even last offseason, I said that I was out on Saquon that year because he was coming off the ACL tear and that I would be all in on him in 2022. And here we are 1 year later, and I'm still, even with him struggling last year, I still have the same, stance on him heading into this year. And, he was like a borderline first round pick, I believe, in most leagues last year. And now he's falling all the way to, late round 2, maybe even early round 3 in 12-team league. So I think at that value, any risk he possesses is baked into that value, in redraft this year. It's going to be a better offensive line with Evan Neal, better coaching staff, I think, better play calling. You look at who's behind him: Gary Brightwell, Matt Breida. There's still little competition behind them, so he should still be the clear-cut workhorse in the Giants' offense. Obviously, there's concerns with the offense and with that system and all that, but I think the way I look at it is it can't get worse than last year. In his rookie year, when he exploded, the offense wasn't great then. Obviously, you can argue that he's not going to see as many targets from Jones as he saw from Eli Manning because of their play styles. But regardless, it just comes down to opportunity, talent, volume, and I think the situation will be a little bit better than it was last year. So that's my first one I'm going to talk about, and then my second one was Allen Robinson. If you kind of look at his career, he's always played with subpar, if you want to even call it that, quarterback play, with Bortles and Trubisky and all those quarterbacks and a few other ones. But and through that, he's had 3 seasons with at least 1,100 yards. Last year, he just seemed to really be just checked out, by the midway point of the season with how bad that situation was last year. And now he joins the Rams, by far his best quarterback, best offense, best everything he's played with. Departures of Robert Woods, Odell Beckham opened up a lot of opportunity. So yeah, it just comes down to I think this offense can easily sustain 2 receivers. Obviously, Kupp will still be the number 1, obviously, but I think A-Rob as the number 2. We saw Jared Goff sustain 2 top receivers in this offense, and Kupp and Woods. And I think Stafford can easily do the same here with Kupp and A-Rob. Odell Beckham's still a free agent. If they do end up bringing him back, this maybe hinders Robinson a tad bit, but Beckham isn't probably going to be ready for the start of the season coming off the ACL tear so late. It was in the Super Bowl, so he's probably not going to be ready for week 1 anyways. But yeah, Saquon and A-Rob are the 2 guys I'm bringing up in this right here.
Yeah, I definitely agree with those. I mean, Saquon has definitely been one of the more bigger risks. A lot of people have been saying Saquon Barkley after his ACL tear, and then obviously the Giants' O-line has always been such a big question, and it proved to be why they're so asinine and trash last year. And after that year, obviously you still have him high, and for me personally, I just can't do that risk anymore. I'm done with Saquon. I've gave him his chances, and I feel like if he has a bounce back year, then good for him. But I definitely would take him really, really low. Definitely not at least past the third round this year, just because of that big question on whether or not that offense is fixed in the Giants organization. But then I definitely say Allen Robinson. I mean, you've seen the quarterbacks he's had from Jacksonville to Chicago. And now he's in LA, and he has a Super Bowl winning now Matthew Stafford as his quarterback, who's definitely known to throw the ball very accurately and very well, especially now on a more improved team in his first year. So I definitely agree with you though on those two. I have two as well. One is also on the Giants. I went with the wide receiver Kenny Golladay. I expect him. He's obviously big and lengthy, and I think either it's Daniel Jones just hating the fact that Kenny Golladay is on the team, or he just does not like Kenny Galladay's height or something. I don't know if there's some discrimination going on there, but I feel like Kenny Golladay has to have a bounce back year this year. You mentioned improved O-line, and I've one of the more easier schedules for the Giants in terms of offense. So I feel like that could definitely be beneficial for both Daniel Jones and Kenny Golladay on that offense. I expect Kenny Golladay to kind of leap himself as the number one, especially with Kadarius Toney now potentially being traded away from that Giants organization after his frustrations after year one. So that really opens the door for Kenny Golladay to really step up and be that number one that a lot of people hoped and expected for him this past season. But with frustrations on that offense, I feel like those are going to be fixed under the new Giants regime. He definitely has the height. We've seen him play well with Matthew Stafford as his quarterback back when he was in Detroit. But now he is in New York and, different system, new quarterback. I feel like that first year was just an adjustment year, and I think they've definitely worked this offseason to make sure that Kenny Golladay will be that number one receiver on that team for this coming season, because I feel like they have no other option at this point to throw the ball to. And number two, I don't think it's going to be a huge increase because he's still a top running back, but I think he's going to have definitely a better schedule to help his stats up, and that's David Montgomery. He has one of the easiest schedules as a running back this year for the Bears, and there's concerns obviously with that backfield, but obviously no Tariq Cohen now, but I mean also prayers out to Tariq Cohen. This man literally tore his Achilles just working out. That's a horrible way to end your season. So hopefully he has a speedy recovery. But back to the point at hand, you mentioned how this Chicago offense is now pretty much going to be ground pound and heavy, obviously after Allen Robinson has left, and they just kind of expect Darnell Mooney to step up and be that number one receiver, and that could pan out great for Darnell Mooney. He could obviously have a great season, but also it could turn out horrible. And the way the Bears schedule is lined up, it really is a big advantage to David Montgomery, and I expect him to have a huge upgrade next season. It's not really a bounce back. I just think he will have definitely a better season this coming season compared to last season, and definitely improved O-line. We'll see how Justin Fields is in year two, especially now under a new head coach. Obviously, one of the bigger frustrations with that Chicago organization was the way Matt Nagy was calling offensive plays. Definitely not great. Low numbers all pretty much throughout the past seasons with Matt Nagy in terms of offense. And the reason that they made the playoffs that one year was just because of how good their defense was with Khalil Mack. So, I definitely see David Montgomery having a big leap next year, not a bounce back, but just a big leap in terms of his running back status. And I definitely see Kenny Golladay having a bounce back season just in terms of how that Giants offense will be probably flowing through Saquon, as you mentioned, or him on the for that receiving core, especially if Kadarius Toney, their slot guy, is potentially being traded out of New York.
Yeah, definitely like Montgomery. He's not really. You mentioned he's already solid last year, but his yards per carry went up last year with Justin Fields under center. So I think with the full offseason, Fields as the clear-cut starter, that's definitely going to help that system, and he should see pretty decent involvement in the passing game too because of their lack of wide receivers on that offense as well. I like Kmet and I like Mooney a lot as well, because the target share found through them pretty primarily, but Montgomery as well. We've seen him be involved in the passing game himself. They got Khalil Herbert, who's a pretty solid handcuff. We saw him in flashes when Montgomery was hurt last year. but Montgomery should maintain. The only concern really is like the changing coaching staff and all that. That's the only really big concern. But Montgomery should be the clear, at least 1A at the very least, or the clear number one. So yeah, 15 to 18 touches, maybe 3 to 5 targets per game could definitely put him, even an RB1 in that kind of system, with that kind of opportunity, and then Galladay, I was completely off of him last year at his value. This year, if he falls far enough, which he probably will fall pretty far given how disappointing it was last year, I still think it's a pretty crowded receiving core with, Shepard, Tony. I haven't heard anything as of late. The chair moved for, like a month ago, so I haven't heard anything as of late. Obviously, a trade could still happen in training camp or whatever, but then they also spent, I think, what was it, second round capital on Wandale Robinson. So, it's still a pretty crowded situation, but Golly is definitely I definitely think Golly's the most talented of that group. And he's, he fits the profile of the number one with his size, playing on the outside. So I can definitely, it can't get worse for him than it was last year, I think, because of, how bad not only he was, but the whole offense, the whole Giants offense was last year. Yeah, definitely can't get worse. So I'm definitely, I think Dable is going to make them, even a little bit better, which I think will help guys like Barkley and Galladay. But yeah, again, for me, Barkley comes down to the volume and opportunity he's going to see. Galladay should be the number one on paper, but it's still a pretty crowded receiving core. We'll see what kind of, the fact that they took Robinson that early in the whole draft kind of shows that he's going to have a pretty big role, you would think. But then again, they spent pretty high capital on Tony, and he didn't really have a huge role until later in the season as well. So you never know at the end of the day.
Yeah, you mentioned you never really know. Obviously, you mentioned that crowded receiving core for that New York Giants organization right there. You mentioned Kadarius Toney's status is still pending. I haven't heard anything even since the draft discussions, but I think that maybe it was just a little rumor to swirl the draft media world around. But yeah, I think that Giants offense could definitely take a big leap as well. Depending on, you mentioned it can't get any worse. Last year we saw how atrocious they really were, and so can it really get any worse? So that's why they're gonna have to have a bounce back season. Obviously there's so many guys you can mention. CeeDee Lamb, that's also a pretty big name who should have a bounce back season, especially no Amari Cooper for that Dallas offense now. So CeeDee is kind of that number one guy. And then returning Michael Gallup. Returning Michael Gallup, definitely a good 1-2 combo there for the Dallas Cowboys. Those two could definitely have big bounce back seasons as well. After that, Dallas offense, started out pretty great, and then it just started to fizzle out toward the end of the season, and then obviously that playoff game where they got eliminated by the Niners at home proved to be the downfall of it. So. We will be back tomorrow for the third episode of the week. Obviously, Friday, busy day. So we're going to be going tomorrow, which is Thursday. We're going to cover game 2 of the NBA Finals between the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat. We'll also, Ari, if you're down for this, instead of going bounce back, we can go fantasy football players that you expect to have a D grade this coming season after schedule comes out and new teams, stuff like that. Tune in that tomorrow, and we'll keep you up with the latest on any NFL news, MLB news, NBA news coming out in the world. But Ari, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, yeah, that was it for this episode.
All right. Well, I guess we will see you guys tomorrow night. Peace out. This has been an episode of AKP Sports Talk.